The debate of the Foreign Press Association in London heard from those both for and against the UK's participation in the European Union. It centred on whether the current world financial crisis would affect relationships between EU countries and if a common stance could be found on issues such as foreign policy and climate change. The prospects for the reform of European institutions were also discussed.
The European Union does what? It takes 1% of Europe's gross national income for its own purposes. That's the total income of the EU, and of that 1%, 85% comes straight back for agricultural and regional payments. It goes straight back to governments. And then the EU has very little control over sheep farmers or tobacco growers or cattle milk producers, how that subsidy is spent. And if we didn't have a common agricultural policy, we'd have a British one and an Irish one, a Portuguese one and a French one, all fighting against each other. Just as we didn't have the European Union to create a single market, I couldn't fly Ryanair and EasyJet. You'd have to pay top dollar for privileged national carriers. But of that 15% that is left to the EU, 1/7 of 1%, they spend as they will. And yet we seem to pretend that an institution that is 1/7 of 1% of the money that's generated in our collective continent somehow could be a steamroller, an obliterator of the national identity of nations. I would argue very strongly that countries like Poland and Lithuania, and even smaller Western countries like Portugal, maybe Greece, my own country on my mother's side of Ireland, has a stronger national identity today than it did before the European Union existed.
Those speaking against greater British participation said there were sound economic reasons for the UK to take a lesser role.
I don't think the economic model upon which the European Union is based works for Britain, and I doubt that it works for many other countries in Europe too. The first reason is that this social model is burdening our industries and burdening our businesses with costs at a time of globalisation, at a time when there are much cheaper competitive areas across the rest of the world. And the second reason I don't believe it's right for Britain is that for us to be so narrow and so limited in our thinking that we've tied ourselves up with a trade system which means we are not allowed to, and forbidden from negotiating our own trade deals with any other part of the world is extraordinary.
But Mr. Dennis McShane said the European Parliament is still a vital institution for European integration.
The European Parliament is an important check on what the Commission does. It is not a legislating parliament. We know that. The people who vote to take final decisions are the democratically accountable ministers of the 27 member states.
With elections for the European Parliament due to be held in the UK on June the 4th, the debate looks set to continue.